Welcome everyone. Like Sad said, my name is Lily Wang. I am the SEAL Lab Manager here at Spark. I called it Human Factors in Data Security. More accurately, it is a kind of a retrospective and a my ideas on research data security, where we are with data enclaves and where we should be going. Also, including what you as researchers or as IT professionals should know if you're looking to engage one. And assistant. Oh, there we go. So why are we here? I basically introduced it. I'm going to be talking about data enclaves, their benefits and challenges, and the way that SEAL has developed since I've been here. Presumably, you are invested in data security in some way. You're working with sensitive data. You're thinking about working with sensitive data. Good for you. It's hard and it's worthwhile. So I'm hoping this talk will give you more information on data enclaves generally, with SEAL as kind of a case study, kind of an example. So for a lot of years, the whole time I've been here, I've been promoting SEAL as a great way for researchers working with highly sensitive data to be able to do their research at McMaster. But I also want to illuminate the challenges of working with a data enclave like SEAL that I've noticed over the years. So I want you to be able to make an informed decision on where your research should go. And, we're all encouraged to find a level of security that's appropriate for our data, but it is complicated because you need to balance your responsibility to communities with the ease of actually performing your research. If you have trouble in this aspect, I encourage you to reach out to the Sherman Center. The research data management team there are fantastic. Okay, so a little bit about me, a lot bit about me, because I feel like the context of where I'm coming from is important to understand my takes. So, like Saud said, my background is in computer science and physics. I did my undergrad as a mature student. I've been asked to participate in research based on my demographics, and I've opted out based on the way that my information was handled. So before SEAL, I worked at the Digital Scholarship Lab at Brock, which is a part of the library. And currently, I've been the lab manager at SEAL for 3 years. So all that to say, I understand the needs of researchers who work closely with sensitive data. From a technical perspective, I know what it takes. From like a researcher perspective, I'm not as familiar, but my clients are researchers and I take in what they say to me. And I know that it is a lot of bureaucracy and administration. So just kind of setting that up. What is a data enclave? Presumably, if you're working with sensitive information, you've come across this term before. So a data enclave is kind of like a computer lab for researchers working with sensitive data. Now, these services can be as part of an institution like SEAL at Spark at McMaster, or a third-party private one like Azure or what Google runs. Then they could be a managed computer. So all the software is done for you, all of the tech support is, there is tech support, or it could be just a server that is spun up for you and is managed by the researcher themselves. It can be offline, which means that you're not connected to the internet at all. You have no access to internet-enabled services, or online where you can work from home, and that would be great. The data inside is not moved, is encrypted, and anybody who's accessing it needs to be vetted, and any output needs to be vetted for confidentiality as well. So those are kind of like the basics. When I started at SEAL, the way it was explained to me was that this is before I had really any understanding of data enclaves, was that it was a secure computing environment for researchers, both at McMaster and globally. It already had physical and remote access. This is right after COVID, so everybody was working from home. I was told that there was high performance computing and that we managed the software in the lab. It had been around since 2004, so it was well established. And I was told that it was important and desired. And so this is what I thought it would be like. I thought I would get in, I thought it would be a little bit of a transition period, and I thought the adoption rate would be very high. This is where kind of my background comes into play because working at the library and not working with researchers directly, my idea was that RDM adoption was through the roof and everybody already had like their research plans ready. So I imagine the buy-in would be really, really high, which it isn't, because as I've come to learn, there are so many barriers with adopting data security practices, especially with data enclaves with their increased security. So the things that I have noticed that people need. This is from my perspective working with researchers. This is less about the technical needs and more about the other pieces that are present. So I'm going to briefly introduce these. Well, no, I'm going to talk about these in depth. So if we're talking about barriers to entry, so we're talking about researcher vetting, we're talking about transparency, understanding, discovery. So people finding out what data enclaves are, what it takes for people to desire to use them, the push and pull factors of like having a data management plan and like being obligated by data providers to have some kind of security, like buy-in because it's maybe sometimes the right thing to do, and how to get access to them, who to contact, what information you need to have. So this is not super transparent off the hop, and I think getting more eyes on it could be a good thing. Then there are technology issues where, you know, for SEAL, I was told that the computers were equivalent to a pretty okay laptop and I could just do this at home. So, as a service provider, I need to make sure that the infrastructure we have is up to spec, that it's actually useful for researchers to have. And as researchers, you need to be able to do your research. So, that's something. Stability and ease of access. How available is the service? Are you able to access it any time of day? Are you able to access it easily? For us, for SEAL, physically, you can access the lab until 10 p.m. when the building closes. Now, you can be in the building at 10, but you can't get back in if you leave. And remotely, we are limited by the number of seats we have. So it is first come, first serve, and there are some issues around like people not logging off and just holding up a computer for days or weeks, and then other people can't get access to it. So, or if your internet is not great, it does disconnect very often, and sometimes it's hard to get back in. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Then we have collaboration. You are presumably not working alone. You're working with your PI, your RA, you're working with co-researchers, sometimes not on campus, sometimes working remote, sometimes in other countries. We have had issues with like people working in different time zones not being able to connect, or if you're working physically in person, in an offline environment, because core and offline environment, you're not able to like email people from the lab. You're not able to like share information. It's like, how do you get around that? Then we have issues with reproducibility because a lot of fields have review processes that take years, that have external reviewers, and they need to be able to access your work and your data, and they need to be vetted. And again, it's another like barriers to entry problem, and how do you get access for reviewers, and are they going to be able to review your work at all? So, is the data still available, and is your work archived, and is it documented? Then we have turnaround. Because it is a secure data lab, it is impossible for users to come in, print something, email something. They all output needs to be vetted, and there's a turnaround time associated with that. At SEAL, sometimes it could be longer than the 48 hours that we said it would be, and that's just how it is here, but it's not necessarily the case everywhere. There's going to be a turnaround time built in, and you need to understand what that is before committing. And prices. Obviously, everyone's funding is super tight right now, and you want to know what you're getting into, and you want to know ahead of time. This is just a little bit of advice. If you're going to commit to doing something, you need to know if you're going to be pretty confident that you're going to be able to afford it for the whole time that you're going to be doing it. Just unsolicited advice in this aspect. Sometimes the prices aren't super transparent, and sometimes they change, and that's, you know, another barrier. So these are kind of issues that have come up with to me, that people have discussed with me going forward, things that they would like improved, things that they would like more clarity on. So things to consider when you go into searching for a data enclave. So the next section, I kind of want to introduce where SEAL was at, and the changes we've made to make it more accessible and just a better service overall. So we've tried to address all of these issues, but with varying levels of success for sure. What we did right, SEAL had remote access as early as 2017, pre-COVID. That was super important in getting people to adopt. It was really, really crucial in for collaboration, because at the time there weren't a lot of services that allowed people to work with researchers in other countries, or uh, just remotely in general, but especially in other countries. We had a system set up in place. We had a system set up to archive projects for 5 years and longer if they needed to be, with discussions, so that if reviewers came and needed to check the work, if they needed to go back and check something, that was possible. Different from like if you're working with Azure or Google, because it's a McMaster service, we would help you liaise with the third-party data providers. We'd help you talk with Milo and MREB and anyone you needed to for funding, for security, for access. And that is just, really important to be able to get your project off the ground. So we also had sliding scale pricing opportunities. I will say it was still slightly expensive and priced out a lot of student projects. So that was an issue that we had, but we did have like scholarship opportunities, which we've expanded on since. And then training for people to use SEAL, because it is a new environment, because it's a lot of researchers use Mac computers and aren't trained on Windows, and SEAL is a Windows environment. And obviously, working with a data enclave, you have the infrastructure set up differently inside. Anyway, and we were trying to keep up to date with our technology. It is an ongoing process, and we're always playing catch up. But I like to think that even when I showed up, we had just invested in a bunch of new server hardware, new computers. So, yeah, not to like toot my own horn or anything. So, to further address the issues we've discussed, this year we introduced a new basic service option, where previously researchers would have to basically they would discuss with us their custom security needs, and we would build it up, and it would be very robust, but expensive. So We introduced a new service for short-term researchers and students with lower sensitivity data to be able to use the lab without all of the security services attached. So it's more affordable. There's less turnaround time for team members for vetting output because we don't do it. And we gave researchers the ability to designate a team manager so they could add new people and change how much data their team members could see. And with that, we also installed a new server blade, which is pretty big deal, increasing our capacity and just making them like faster than a laptop that you would get. We also increased uh, the number of like the software that we have to more accurately reflect what people were needing at no additional fee, I might add. And then to address the accessibility issues, we have been building outreach. We've asked for more institutional support. We've reached out to researchers more, which is why we're here. Not just why we're here, but one of the reasons. And a lot of policy changes, like introducing pricing options up front instead of later in the discussion. A lot of like just more transparency with the services available, the timelines, what they would look like, and doing tours of the lab and, that kind of thing. So part of also trying to make it the prices lower was getting centralized support as a core research platform. So that was something that we were trying to do, but did not finish. So, what should you look for as a researcher who is considering a data enclave? So, chime in after with like anything else that you think of for sure. So, you need to consider what your security needs are. You need something that will meet your need and doesn't exceed it, because if it exceeds it, it's more expensive, there's longer turnaround time, there's more bureaucracy. So, for the level of sensitive data that you have, the bare minimum security requirements will get you the most time to work with your data. Then you want to look at where the data enclave is located and how they deal with data ownership. So if it's a university, obviously the data provider owns the data, but you have negotiations with the data provider. If it's third party, you have to check if maybe they take ownership of the data. How is it controlled? Who has access? How long is it stored for? Where is the data enclave? If it's not in the country, what are the laws that are protecting the data or not protecting the data? You want to consider its reputation. You obviously, just like any other business, you would check the reviews before you decide if you're wanting to go with it. And it's harder to get reviews, obviously, for something like this, but its reputation is incredibly important. And you can, like, we publish a list of publications that were done in SEAL, like with assistance from SEAL. So you could reach out to those researchers and see how their experience was. I'm sure other data enclaves also do this. Yeah. Then you want to know what the computing environment is like. It helps if you know what software you're trying to use, what your computing needs are before you go to the data enclave, but they should also work with you on finding the level of technology that's appropriate to what you're trying to do. Then you're looking for stability and accessibility. Are you guaranteed access? Are you always going to be able to log on? Will it be full like half the time and you just have to wait? How reliable is it? So, and then service team, so research support and service. How responsive is the team? If you're reaching out and they're taking like a week to respond to you, it's probably going to take a while for them to get you the support that you need. So, what are your needs in that aspect? Do you need someone to respond to you right away? Are you okay waiting for a couple of days? Do they have a help desk? What is their turnaround time? So, things that you should look for. Is there is there anything else anybody can think of, like off the top of their head this is interesting because like if you have something, then maybe it's something that I can look into for SEAL in the future as well. So thank you, Marie Helen. Okay, so kind of so what we're trying to say is that we've come a long way from just locked room with computer and people having to come in for weeks to do their research and stay on campus and things like that. Very, very long way. But we're not all the way there yet. Obviously, technology is always improving. And, as we increase the buy-in for data management plans and things like that, there's going to be, oh wait, next slide. Yeah, so there's still a lot to be done. So once our technical barriers are removed or lessened, human factors are what drives the solution and adoption of data enclaves. Title drop. So we're talking about data management plans, having your work documented throughout the process to help reviewers when they need to access your work in the secure enclave and to minimize the time that they're in there because that is money. Then we could have better distinction on types of sensitive data. So for researchers to be able to better understand what kind of security they need and what their responsibilities are to their communities and to like legislation and things like that. And you can always improve the security and you can always improve the technology. But as IT professionals, adopting technology that helps and not hinders the researcher to not add more barriers. And I said and more if you guys had any takes. But so, anytime if you want to share them, but also like no pressure. Okay, that is all I wanted to get through. My name is Lily Wang again. You can reach me at seal@mcmaster.ca. The recording will be posted, and I think Sound has links for you. But any questions?
Thank you again, Lily, for the great talk. Actually, before we get to questions, I will just interject with the link if that's okay. I will ask, sorry, Lynn, to send a link to a survey in the chat. And we ask that everyone complete this survey now before we get to the questions. It should take less than a minute and it helps us tailor our Spark talks to topics that people are really interested in. So if we can maybe take a minute now to fill out the survey, it'll be a minute of relatively awkward silence, and then we can get to the questions.
Oh, I just want to talk about other data enclaves that are available to people. So not just Seal, even though I'm here mostly to plug us. So Queens has a really robust one that's connected to their like high computing environment. It's centrally supported. It's really robust and well managed. If you're on Ontario, if you have like data security needs where like it needs to stay in Canada, it needs to stay in Ontario, Queens is a really, really great choice. They're really responsive. If you're in the States, we went to the CRADC at Cornell not too long ago to kind of align with them, and our policies are much the same and very like considerate of the researcher. I don't know if they'll take non-Cornell researchers, actually, so that might not be as helpful. But I think Queens works with people from anywhere.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's enough time for folks to fill out the survey. So if you have any questions, as noted in the beginning of the talk, feel free to say them out loud by raising your hand or unmuting your mic or sending them into the chat. And maybe I can get us started with one that I had throughout the talk. Actually, based on Mary Helen's question or comment, she made mention of partners that they were working with. And as you know, Lily, here at Spark, we often work with community partners and collect data that is sensitive, but that also presents a unique challenge for research data management to have a group of researchers and non-academic folks work on a project. I was wondering if you had any experience dealing with those situations or general pieces of thought and advice on that situation.
For sure. Just give me a second. I'm glad they have the transcript up. Just read the text of your question again. For sure. I think that's something that needs to be built into your research data management plan. Um, if you're working with community partners, you need to discuss with them upfront about realistic expectations around where they will have concerns about where their data is stored. So working with the data enclave or can usually provide you with information for the layman, for the general public. Like at SEAL, we have like documents that we can send out to community partners so that they and to like different people around campus so they kind of understand more what we do and to address those concerns and then to maybe be upfront with the fees that are also associated with that so to alleviate any stress in that area. I know it's delicate to work with community people to talk about risks. So that is up to the researcher. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Yes. Thanks for those thoughts, Lily.
If we don't have anything else, you can also always reach out to me at my email, which is, I'll just put it. Thank you, everyone.